worse than a collapse. It's a tidal wave that could swallow the auto industry whole, and the CEO of Ford just sounded the alarm. This isn't about a downturn or a temporary slump. Ford is staring down a challenge so massive, so unprecedented, that it could shake the very foundation of how cars are built, sold, and driven. And guess what? It's not just Ford. This could disrupt the entire industry and the lives of millions. What has the CEO of Ford so worried that he's warning everyone about this now? How could this tidal wave impact car buyers, workers, and even the future of transportation? And most importantly, why should you care? Stay tuned, because what's on the horizon could hit your wallet, your commute, and even your livelihood. What's happening and why? The CEO of Ford has delivered a stark warning, one that has sent shockwaves through the automotive industry. He did not mince words, describing an impending turmoil that could be unlike anything the industry has ever faced. This is not just about a single company struggling. It is about a system on the brink of disruption, with the potential to redefine the future of transportation. The triggers for this warning are rooted in mounting economic pressures. Skyrocketing production costs are hitting automakers hard, especially as raw materials like lithium, a critical component for electric vehicle batteries, continue to rise in price. These economic hurdles come hand in hand with a rapidly changing market landscape, where the push toward electric vehicles has outpaced consumer demand and infrastructure readiness. The warning also underscores the looming threat of unsustainable investments in electric vehicle production, a gamble that might not pay off if consumers remain hesitant to embrace these new technologies. The financial strain on Ford has become increasingly evident. Recent reports show that their electric vehicle division has incurred significant losses, and retail sales to individual consumers have been steadily declining. It is a perfect storm of high costs, uncertain returns, and a market that seems unwilling or unable to absorb the changes being pushed upon it. But what is the root problem? The challenges facing Ford, and by extension the entire auto industry, are multifaceted and deeply interconnected. At the heart of the issue lies the rising cost of raw materials, particularly those needed for electric vehicle production. Lithium, cobalt, and nickel are essential for building batteries, yet their prices have soared due to supply chain constraints and increased global demand. This has made electric vehicle production far more expensive than initially anticipated. Adding to the complexity is consumer behavior. While electric vehicles are often hailed as the future of transportation, many buyers remain unconvinced. High sticker prices, limited charging infrastructure, and concerns about battery longevity have left consumers wary. Meanwhile, affordable gas-powered vehicles still dominate the market, creating a stark divide between what automakers want to sell and what consumers are willing to buy. Ford has leaned heavily on fleet sales, vehicles sold in bulk to businesses and government agencies to keep revenue flowing. While this strategy has provided a temporary boost, it is not a sustainable solution. Fleet vehicles are typically sold at lower margins, and this over-reliance exposes the company to risks if fleet demand slows down. These interconnected problems are not isolated to Ford, but signal a larger crisis building across the industry. How will this affect Ford and the industry? The challenges faced by Ford are a microcosm of broader issues within the auto industry. As consumer preferences shift, the disconnect between what automakers are producing and what buyers want becomes more apparent. Affordable, smaller vehicles remain in demand, yet manufacturers are pouring resources into high-cost electric vehicles that many consumers simply cannot afford. This misalignment has the potential to ripple through every corner of the industry. Dealerships already grappling with overstocked lots of unsold vehicles may face financial strain if they cannot move inventory. Jobs within the automotive sector, from factory workers to salespeople, could be at risk as companies restructure to weather the storm. Even innovation may take a hit, as automakers are forced to prioritize short-term survival over long-term advancements. The situation is particularly dire for Ford, whose challenges are compounded by its ambitious and costly electric vehicle initiatives. The company struggles to balance electric vehicle investments with declining traditional vehicle sales, highlight a precarious position that other automakers may soon find themselves in. What makes this situation so alarming is that it extends far beyond financial metrics. The issues at hand are not just about profit margins or market share, they are about the long-term viability of an industry undergoing a seismic shift. The transition to electric vehicles, while necessary for environmental and regulatory reasons, is exposing deep vulnerabilities in the traditional automotive business model. The warning from the CEO of Ford is a harbinger of broader challenges that could reshape the auto industry as we know it. This is not merely a collapse of one company's fortunes, it is a potential unraveling of an entire ecosystem. The next question is clear. What factors are making this crisis even worse? And why might the industry struggle to survive in its current form? The electric vehicle dilemma. Ford's Model E division, once seen as the crown jewel of its transition to electric vehicles, is now a glaring example of the struggles facing the entire electric vehicle industry. In the last fiscal year, the division reported losses exceeding $1.3 billion, an astronomical figure for a company trying to redefine its future. Ford is not alone in this. Many automakers are grappling with the same issue. Electric vehicles are not yet profitable, and the gap between costs and revenues is widening. Government incentives and environmental mandates have pushed automakers to accelerate electric vehicle production, but the demand from consumers hasn't caught up. Despite hefty tax credits and aggressive marketing, the reality is stark. Most buyers are hesitant to adopt electric vehicles. High sticker prices, concerns about charging infrastructure, and long-term maintenance costs are major deterrents. Here's the irony. Automakers are pouring billions into the very technology they are losing money on. For every electric vehicle sold, companies like Ford incur losses that make traditional gasoline-powered vehicles look far more appealing in terms of profitability. It is a paradox. The push towards sustainability is simultaneously threatening the financial sustainability of the industry itself. The consumer crisis. For the average consumer, the auto market is becoming increasingly inaccessible. Vehicle prices have skyrocketed, with the cost of both electric and gasoline-powered cars outpacing wage growth by a significant margin. The average transaction price for a new car in the United States has climbed well above $40,000, putting even entry-level vehicles out of reach for many families. Electric vehicles, touted as the future of transportation, often carry price tags closer to $60,000 or more, even after federal tax credits. But the challenges don't stop at the dealership. Rising interest rates on car loans are making monthly payments unaffordable for countless buyers. What used to be a $500 monthly payment for a mid-range sedan is now inching closer to $1,000 for many models. This affordability gap is not just about pricing, it's about priorities. For many consumers, transportation costs now rival essential expenses like housing and healthcare. Faced with stagnant wages and increasing debt, many buyers are delaying vehicle purchases altogether, creating a ripple effect that impacts dealerships, automakers, and local economies. The supply chain nightmare. As if pricing and consumer demand weren't challenging enough, ongoing supply chain disruptions are throwing additional wrenches into the gears of the auto industry. The global shortage of semiconductors, a critical component in nearly all modern vehicles, continues to hinder production across the board. Automakers, including Ford, are struggling to secure reliable supplies, leading to delayed manufacturing timelines and increased costs. It doesn't end with semiconductors. The transition to electric vehicles has intensified the demand for rare materials like lithium, cobalt, and nickel, which are essential for battery production. The scarcity of these resources is driving up costs and causing fierce competition among automakers. Meanwhile, the shipping and logistics sectors are still reeling from the aftermath of the global health crisis, adding another layer of unpredictability to an already strained supply chain. Every delay, every price hike on raw materials translates directly to higher production costs for automakers. And for consumers, it means fewer choices and longer waiting times for vehicles that are already priced out of reach. The supply chain issues are not just logistical challenges, they are existential threats to the industry's ability to function at scale. What's pushing the industry to the edge? Beyond internal challenges, external forces are magnifying the pressure on the auto industry. Global economic instability, marked by inflation and fluctuating energy costs, is affecting consumer confidence and spending habits. When households tighten their budgets, big-ticket items like new vehicles are often the first to be postponed or abandoned entirely. Geopolitical tensions are also playing a significant role. Trade wars and tariffs on key materials are disrupting supply lines, particularly for the components needed for electric vehicles. Dependence on international suppliers for critical resources leaves automakers vulnerable to political conflicts that can escalate without warning. Finally, rapidly changing environmental regulations are forcing automakers to adapt at a pace that feels almost impossible to sustain. Governments worldwide are setting ambitious targets for reducing carbon emissions, pushing companies to overhaul their production methods and fleets in record time. While these regulations aim to address long-term environmental goals, the short-term strain on automakers is immense. All of these factors, the internal struggles, the supply chain crises, and the external pressures are converging to create a perfect storm. What happens when this storm reaches its peak? That's what we'll uncover next. The industry's breaking point. When production costs surpass profits, a breaking point becomes inevitable, and the automotive industry is inching dangerously close to that line. The CEO of Ford has sounded the alarm, but it's not just his company that's in trouble. It's a harbinger of a systemic collapse looming across the entire industry. For years, manufacturers have operated on thin margins, banking on high-volume sales to sustain operations. Now, those margins are evaporating as material costs skyrocket, supply chains remain unstable, and demand for expensive electric vehicles lags behind expectations. Consider this: the costs of essential materials like lithium, cobalt, and nickel, critical for electric vehicle batteries, have soared to levels that make profit margins unsustainable. Ford's recent financial disclosures revealed that their electric vehicle division alone reported billions in losses. When the cost of manufacturing vehicles outweighs what consumers are willing or able to pay, it forces companies into an untenable position. Layoffs are already on the rise, and factories are beginning to shut down production lines. These closures don't just indicate trouble for individual companies, they signify a larger reckoning for the entire industry. Dealerships once overflowing with inventory are now turning away new allocations because they simply cannot sell vehicles at the current prices. The ripple effect is unmistakable. Fewer cars being sold means fewer jobs at assembly plants, fewer orders for parts suppliers, and an economic slowdown that reverberates far beyond the auto sector. What makes this even more alarming is the scale of the industry's integration into the global economy. The automotive sector is a backbone for countless other industries, from steel manufacturing to advanced electronics. A disruption at this level could have cascading effects, impacting everything from global trade to national employment rates. The warning from the CEO of Ford isn't just about one company, it's about an entire ecosystem teetering on the edge. What happens to consumers? For everyday car buyers, the fallout is already palpable. Vehicle prices have reached unprecedented highs, with the average new car price now exceeding amounts most families can comfortably finance. The situation is even worse for electric vehicles, which, despite government subsidies and incentives, remain out of reach for the majority of consumers. Ford's own electric trucks and sport utility vehicles are prime examples of vehicles priced far beyond what most buyers can afford. As costs rise, manufacturers have reduced their focus on producing affordable options, leaving buyers with fewer choices. Small, economical cars have largely disappeared from showroom floors, replaced by larger, more expensive trucks and sport utility vehicles. Financing has also become a significant hurdle. With interest rates climbing steadily, monthly payments for new vehicles are now so high that many potential buyers are being priced out of the market entirely. This raises a critical question: is car ownership becoming a luxury? For decades, automobiles have been a symbol of freedom and accessibility. They are tools that connect people to work, school, and opportunity. If owning a car becomes a privilege reserved for the wealthy, the societal implications could be profound. Public transportation systems in many areas are insufficient to fill the gap, particularly in rural regions where cars are a necessity, not a convenience. The consequences of this shift could lead to a fundamental rethinking of how transportation operates in society. Shared mobility services like ride sharing and car subscriptions may become the norm for those unable to afford personal vehicles. However, these alternatives come with their own set of limitations, including access issues and unpredictable costs. The fallout from the automotive industry's struggles is not just financial, it is cultural, reshaping the way people move and interact in their daily lives. The domino effect on jobs and communities. The automotive industry is one of the largest employers in the world, supporting millions of workers directly and indirectly. When layoffs occur in this sector, the ripple effects are felt far and wide. Assembly line workers, parts manufacturers, logistics operators, and even service technicians are all vulnerable to job losses when production slows. The closure of a single factory can devastate an entire community, especially in areas where the local economy is heavily reliant on the automotive industry. Consider the interconnectedness of this ecosystem. When a factory closes, the effects extend to the suppliers who provide parts, the transport companies that deliver those parts, and the small businesses that depend on workers' incomes, such as restaurants, shops, and schools. Entire towns have historically risen and fallen alongside the fortunes of auto plants. As more factories face closures or scale back operations, the impact on these communities could be catastrophic. And this economic strain does not stop with local economies. The reduction in disposable income income among laid-off workers leads to decreased consumer spending, which further weakens other sectors of the economy. Retail, hospitality, and even housing markets feel the pinch when automotive jobs disappear. For governments, this means an increased burden on unemployment benefits and social safety nets, straining public resources. The broader societal consequences are equally concerning. Rising unemployment and economic instability contribute to social unrest, widening the gap between those who can weather financial hardships and those who cannot. The fallout from the automotive industry's struggles could exacerbate existing inequalities, creating a divide that may take decades to bridge. The bigger picture. This crisis is not just about the automotive industry, it is about the future of transportation, economic stability, and global interdependence. What is unfolding before our eyes is a systemic failure to adapt to rapid technological and economic changes. Companies like Ford are caught between the push for innovation and the pull of financial reality, unable to reconcile the two at a pace that satisfies consumers, investors, and regulators alike. The global economy relies on the automotive sector in ways that are not immediately visible. Automobiles are more than vehicles. They are technological platforms, economic drivers, and cultural icons. A collapse or even a significant disruption within this industry could have ramifications that extend far beyond car buyers and manufacturers. Supply chains spanning continents could be disrupted. Trade balances between nations could shift, and entire industries could be forced to pivot or perish. What comes next is the question that looms over all of this. Can the industry evolve quickly enough to survive these challenges? Will automakers find a way to produce vehicles that are both innovative and affordable? Or will the fallout signal the beginning of a new era in transportation, where personal car ownership gives way to shared mobility, public transit, and other alternatives? The CEO of Ford has issued a warning that cannot be ignored. It is a call to action not just for the auto industry, but for governments, consumers, and society as a whole. Because if this collapse isn't the end, what comes next could be even more transformative. The stakes are higher than they have ever been, and the time to act is now. What comes next? The auto industry has faced crises before, but none like this. If the industry manages to survive, it will not emerge the same. What's coming is not just a recovery or a rebuild, it is an opportunity for reinvention. The road ahead is uncertain, but it is also ripe with possibilities. A future where sustainable, cost-effective transportation solutions dominate is not just a dream, it is becoming a necessity. Automakers, including Ford, must rethink their strategies to address shifting consumer demands, environmental pressures, and technological advancements. The question is no longer whether the industry will change, but how fast and in what direction. Electric vehicles may no longer be the crown jewel if they remain unaffordable to the majority. The focus could shift to hybrids, hydrogen-powered vehicles, or even mass adoption of advanced public transportation. For Ford to weather this storm, it needs more than innovation. It requires a revolution. Historically, the company has been known for its resilience, adapting to seismic shifts in the industry. The move from internal combustion engines to electric vehicles was ambitious, but ambition without sustainability is a recipe for failure. To survive, Ford must reevaluate its priorities. Instead of chasing high-margin electric vehicles that alienate the average buyer, the company should pivot toward producing vehicles that meet the financial realities of its consumers. Affordable electric vehicles, fuel-efficient gas-powered options, and versatile hybrids should form the backbone of the strategy. But survival is not just about the vehicles, it is about the company's financial stability. Ford must address its spiraling production costs and ensure its electric vehicle projects do not continue bleeding billions. Collaboration with suppliers to secure cheaper raw materials and investment in scalable battery technology are key steps. By focusing on partnerships, the company can reduce expenses and create a competitive edge in an increasingly crowded electric vehicle market. Moreover, expanding fleet sales could offer a lifeline. While the profit margins are smaller, the guaranteed volume could provide the stability Ford needs to regain its footing. Consumers stand at the heart of this transformation, and they have questions. Many questions. What will this mean for pricing, availability, the vehicles they rely on daily? The truth is, buyers can expect significant changes. High-end vehicles may remain on dealership lots longer as affordability becomes the critical factor in purchasing decisions. Consumers should prepare for a world where smaller, budget-friendly vehicles are the norm, while large trucks and luxury sedans take a back seat. Electric vehicles may still dominate the narrative, but only those with reduced price tags will appeal to the average consumer. So, what does this mean for you? Pay attention to the deals emerging from dealerships. Automakers desperate to offload unsold inventory may offer discounts, lower interest rates, or incentives that make a vehicle purchase more appealing. At the same time, consider alternative transportation solutions, with urban areas increasingly adopting bike-friendly routes, advanced public transit systems, and even ride-sharing models. The traditional model of car ownership may not be the only option. As costs for fuel and maintenance rise, it may make more sense to explore leasing, shared ownership, or even foregoing vehicle ownership altogether in favor of public or community transportation systems. And what of the broader implications? The warning issued by the CEO of Ford is not just about cars, it is a wake-up call. This moment is about the economy, jobs, and the environment. Every unsold truck sitting on a dealership lot represents a ripple effect. It is a factory line worker with fewer hours, a supply chain company with reduced demand, and a community that relies on the auto industry for its survival. Beyond the economic impact, the environmental stakes are just as high. As automakers grapple with sustainability, every decision they make today will affect the planet for generations to come. The real question is, are we ready for what's coming? Because it is not just a collapse. It is not just a financial crisis. It is the unraveling of the way we have done things for decades. And whether it is a challenge or an opportunity depends on how we, as consumers, workers, and citizens, respond. The road ahead is daunting, but it is also full of possibilities. The next chapter for the auto industry and for all of us begins now. What comes next? The auto industry is at a turning point. This is not just another challenge, it is a complete upheaval. Traditional methods of designing, manufacturing, and selling vehicles are being replaced by demands for sustainability, affordability, and innovation. Consumers want cars that fit their budgets, while governments push for greener solutions. Automakers are stuck in the middle, scrambling to adapt or face irrelevance. Electric vehicles are a major part of the solution, but they are not the only answer. With their high costs and limited accessibility, the focus may shift to more practical alternatives like hybrids, hydrogen-powered cars, and even public transportation systems. Companies that can diversify their offerings and cater to a broader audience will have a clear advantage. The future demands flexibility, and automakers who fail to pivot quickly may not survive this transformation. The warning that matters. The warning from the CEO of Ford is not just about the company, it is about an industry-wide reckoning. For Ford to survive, it must address its financial instability. Billions in losses from its electric vehicle division underscore the need to cut costs and rethink strategies. Instead of focusing on high-margin, premium models, Ford should invest in affordable options that appeal to the average buyer. This transformation will also impact consumers. Rising vehicle prices, supply chain disruptions, and the high cost of maintenance mean car ownership might soon feel like a luxury. Buyers may need to explore alternatives like leasing, ride-sharing, or advanced public transit systems, particularly in urban areas. The days of easy car ownership are fading, replaced by a more strategic approach to transportation. This is about more than cars. The ripple effects stretch to jobs, local economies, and the environment. Every unsold truck is a symbol of a stalled system, from factory workers facing reduced hours to communities struggling with fewer resources. On the environmental front, the stakes are even higher. Automakers must embrace sustainability not just as a trend, but as a necessity to stay relevant in a world demanding greener solutions. What lies ahead is not just survival, but reinvention. The decisions made today by companies like Ford will determine the future of transportation for decades to come. Are we ready to face it? Because what's coming is not just worse than a collapse. It is the start of something